everyone. Thank you for coming this afternoon. It's great to see all of you out. They don't tell you about these lights when you get up here. My name is Caroline Russell, and I'm a senior here at this outstanding university. I'm actually going to be graduating in May with a major in sociology and political science and a certificate in gender and women's studies. And I'm a member of the UW-Madison College Democrats, but I didn't start my college journey here. And although my experience may be different from yours and all of yours, it's crucial we recognize none of our experiences are the same. And that's why this conversation today is so important. I grew up in a working class family. Hi, Mom and Dad. My mother's a small business owner, and my father works in pharmaceuticals. I grew up knowing that if I was going to go to college, I would have to finance it mainly by myself. And I was okay with that. I got a job at 14 and started saving. I took AP classes in high school to get college credit, and I studied profusely to get good grades so I could get a high GPA, to hopefully get scholarships so I would have an easy time getting into school. But that wasn't enough. So I decided to start at Madison College to save money. And I did everything you're supposed to do when you know you want to go to college. Like so many of you young intellectuals, I'm burdened with debt. I met Russ last month, and I told him that upon graduation I was expecting about $40,000. However, I have since looked at all of my loan statements and recalculated. $65,000. And I even took the budget-friendly route. Attending Madison College allowed me to get the same gen eds as all of you and offered tremendous opportunities. While there, I chaired Wisconsin Student Government, an organization that advocates for the 400,000 technical college students across this state. And that is when I began my own journey for college affordability. I spent time in the state capitol and DC explaining to legislators that debt associated with college affordability is detrimental to our middle class. Woo. Unfortunately, though, I was met with only positive sympathies and no action. The repercussions of this debt will follow me for the rest of my life. Even with a strict budget, it'll be difficult for me to meet the minimums for the basic cornerstones of adulthood. This debt will prevent me from being a productive member of society simply for obtaining a degree that is not only sufficient but necessary in most job markets. Now, I am not a lifelong Democrat. Every day I'm growing into this way of thinking as I learn about who I am, what I value, and where I situate myself in the world. My parents have grown with me. I have long lines of working-class families that only add to my motivation. And my parents have worked exceedingly hard for their entire lives, but they couldn't contribute the amount to my education that FAFSA calculated. Sure, FAFSA, maybe my parents could have contributed $13,000 a year if I didn't have a twin brother or an older brother, or if my father hadn't been diagnosed with cancer in 2006, or re-diagnosed this last spring. Perhaps if my twin brother Ryan hadn't been in a motorcycle accident last fall while he was serving in the Marine Corps. 10 long days waiting for him to wake up, only to realize that he has severe short-term memory loss. And my parents were right by his side the entire time. Maybe if all of that had not happened, they could have contributed the amount to my education that FAFSA calculated, sure. But the reality is that I'm not alone. My situation is not special, and there are so many more stories just like mine, and many that are even worse. Things pop up in life. There are always going to be unexpected events that we cannot account for. That doesn't mean we should be unable to go to college. We're setting our country back by robbing our students of the opportunity to get an education. Our middle class is struggling, and we're cutting off the best way to help it thrive. We grow through investing in education and in our students. Our college students cannot survive in an educational system which borrows into our futures takes over our lives now before we even have a diploma in hand. When we have a country that's full of tremendously intelligent students with bright futures ahead of them, being dimmed by the very system that claims to set them apart, we need a change in policy. When former and future Senator Russ Feingold attended UW-Madison in 1971, tuition for a whole year was $451, or about $2,600 in today's dollars, okay? But tuition today is over $10,000 for a year, and total costs are around $25,000, and you can add another 20 if you're not from Wisconsin or Minnesota. It is no longer feasible for students to work their way through college with numbers like that. And no, Ron Johnson, I do not have $65,000 in debt because I think of it as free money. The correct statement would be that I do not have $100,000 in debt because I started at a technical college and saved $35,000. And I'm highly aware that borrowing is very, very expensive. The status quo has long been unacceptable, and we need a policy change. Russ Feingold, along with Senator Elizabeth Warren, know and understand the value that education has. Together, they will gather support to reinvest in Pell Grants, demand the government allow student loan refinancing, and maybe even get to the point of student debt relief, because in the United States, student loan debt has surpassed credit card and auto loan debt. We're the only developed country of the world that faces this problem, and we so badly need a change in policy. And change starts with a small group deciding that enough is enough and a real solution must be brought to the table. Do we not believe that we're being cheated by our educational system? Are we not rational, conscious individuals that are capable of change? Because I think that we do, and I know that we are. Students have affected change countless times throughout history. We, the students, can and will make a difference by demanding a change in policy. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Let's hear another round of applause for Caroline Russell. Thank you so much for being here. This crowd is a testament to how important this issue is and the fact that we need to come together to work on it. My name is Phoenix Rice Johnson. I attend the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I'm a senior here, and I'm originally from Pahoa, Hawaii. From the age of 6, I was raised by my father on a mechanic's income, and for most of my childhood, we lived without electricity or running water. My father's annual salary was well below the poverty line, so attending college sort of felt like a distant dream most of the time. When I was old enough, I began calculating the cost of attending schools that were around the level of my SAT score, and when I looked into the University of Wisconsin and saw the tuition cost for an out-of-state student, I noticed that was over double my father's annual salary. Thankfully, I've been the beneficiary of federal grants and government loans that have made it possible for me to achieve my dream of pursuing a degree. But not every person is knowledgeable about those resources. When most people look at those price tags, they're too afraid to even look into it or to apply, like many of the fellow students that went to my high school and qualified for free and reduced lunch. The tremendous cost of college is alarming, and oftentimes it feels unfair that we try so hard to achieve our dreams of gaining an education, but are saddled with enormous debt well into our futures. Thankfully, today, We as Badgers are joined by a man who understands what we're going through, someone who has been in our shoes. Russ Feingold is a fellow Badger. He attended the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and like many of you, he braved Celery Hall his freshman year. He went to Wisconsin public schools and knows firsthand the value of an affordable, world-class UW education. He took the knowledge he gained from Wisconsin schools and paid it forward in the true fashion of the Wisconsin idea by teaching Wisconsin residents at both Marquette and Lawrence University. Russ has always championed the importance of an education for our economy, for our state, and for generations to come. Russ watched both of his daughters graduate from UW schools, one from UW-Eau Claire and one from UW-Madison. As a result, he understands the costly effects of tuition hikes on Wisconsin families. He knows that student loan debt and skyrocketed interest rates are a new normal for too many college students. If the current trend of increasing tuition continues, middle and working class students like myself and many of you might not be able to afford college at all. The sort of education we are all working so hard to obtain will become a privilege for the wealthy few, and that's not what America is about. Worst of all, thank you. Worst of all, student loan debt is keeping young people like us from starting our adult lives. How am I supposed to invest in a home or a car when I'm too worried about seeing my student loan debt bill coming in the mail? That's not good for our economy, and that's not good for our future. Russ not only cares about these issues, he's not only concerned about talking about them, but he is committed to finding lasting solutions. He supports increasing federal Pell Grants, one of the programs that makes it possible for me to attend this world-class institution. And he encourages simplifying the process of applying for financial aid. He understands that responsible students, like the people behind me on this stage and the people like you in this crowd, should be allowed to refinance their loans, just like responsible mortgage holders are allowed to refinance theirs. And I know we can rely on Russ to work on these issues, because as senator, he stood with young Wisconsinites and students, and he'll do it again. Today, it is my great honor and privilege to introduce to all of you a personal hero, a man who shows us that middle-class folks can come together, rally around an issue, and create change. Please join me in welcoming Russ Feingold.
Hello, everybody. Man, it's good to be here. Thank you very much. I want to thank you so much. I want to thank Phoenix and Caroline, too. I appreciate the introduction, but I particularly appreciate them telling you about the issues they've faced on this issue we're discussing today. Their comments and their stories about their situation that I know so many of you can relate to is far more important than anything I can say, because that's the reality that you are facing in your generation. I'm thrilled to be back here on campus. This is my alma mater. And this is a very historic theater. It'll be even more historic because of the person that came to be with me today. And that's my good friend, Senator Elizabeth Warren, will join us today. We've known each other for many years. I knew her long before she became a senator, and we were able to fight together, particularly against a nasty bankruptcy bill that the big banks and the credit companies jammed through the Congress. She was our leading advisor. And she is the one that taught me the ropes on that issue so we could fight along with the late Paul Wellstone and the late Ted Kennedy. But even before I met Elizabeth, I had a little taste of this thing. When Phoenix introduced me, she mentioned that one of my daughters went here, and the other one went to University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. She's the older one. She got her acceptance one day, and the credit card solicitations came in the next day. This was not what Dad wanted to see. And it was a little sign of this ruthless approach that kept getting worse and worse. But Elizabeth Warren hasn't just talked about this issue. She's put it in a broader context. No one has done this better. She has put all these issues that middle-class and working families face together and is the leading advocate for those working families in the entire United States of America. And it's true, although it's a bit jarring here, it was 44 years ago that I came up from Janesville. It took about 45 minutes to go to the dorm room at Sellery Hall. I was a freshman. Maybe one of you lives in my old room now. Hasn't changed a whole lot. It wasn't always easy to study up there. And sometimes I was part of the problem. Tell you one story. So back in those days on Regent Street, near Camp Randall, there was the most fabulous place called the Donut Factory. Some of my friends remember. So, 2 o'clock in the morning, the cinnamon rolls were done down there. It might be 10 below, but we would walk down there with those Air Force Parkers on, like the furry periscopes walking around. We'd walk all the way down there from Sellery Hall, and we'd smell this wonderful stuff, and we'd get these donuts and eat a bunch of them and walk back in the cold. Well, one night, my roommate and I decided in Sellery that we'd try something a little different. We had access to a car. So we drove down there, and we got dozens of these donuts, cinnamon and glazed. I sound like Homer Simpson maybe, but we drove, and we got, you got it, Wisconsin whole milk. I'm sorry, but it was whole milk. And we brought it back, and we went, put it in our room, and we went down the hall and started putting a stick and knocking on every door at 3 o'clock in the morning. So all these angry guys, was all guys then, all these angry guys came tearing down to get at us, and they came in the room, and there was this beautiful display of donuts and milk. And they loved it. They grumbled a little bit, but, guys get hungry in college, so we survived, and we did not ever try it again. But that's a fond memory. But the introduction was right. I got a great education here. Unbelievable education. But it only cost me $451 in tuition. A few weeks ago, I helped a young family friend move into the exact same residence hall. His total cost will be $24,735, and with an in-state tuition that is so many times higher, it's almost unbelievable. As I travel across all of Wisconsin's 72 counties this summer, I asked people to tell me what it was that they were most concerned about. I didn't lecture them or tell them what I wanted to talk about. People are concerned about having money left over for extraordinary expenses like an auto repair or a child's wedding. But I'll tell you what I heard most. The thing that got the biggest reaction whenever people mention it, over and over, that cost of higher education when you have a son or daughter in high school and they're going to college or going to other school. That is the single most common comment I hear. And that's why we're talking about it today. But before I came here to see you, on Labor Day weekend, we did roundtables with students here on this campus, at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, at the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay, at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and we'd listen to what they had to say. Most students told me that their post-college plans, because of this financing problem, weren't always focused on starting a new life for themselves or how they're going to contribute to their communities. More and more post-college plans start and end with the question of how to pay off their student loans. And I don't think that's the way life should start off after college. One young woman told me that it's a common subject that comes up on a first date. Sort of people have something in common, student loans. We need a better icebreaker for kids, for young people. You deserve better than that. All across our state, newly graduated young adults are delaying plans to buy a home or open a business or start a family. 7 in 10 Wisconsinites graduating in 2013 had student debt carrying an average over $28,000. I'll tell you, that would have freaked me out if I was a student. I don't want to scare you, but I want to be honest with you. That really upset me if I had to do that. Nationally, student debt now is an economic crisis, totaling nearly $1.2 trillion of debt. It shouldn't be this way. It can't be this way. When I was your age, I didn't have to do this. I could move on with my life. And frankly, same thing for the incumbent senator. He didn't have to do this either. We didn't have this burden. I believe it is our moral responsibility to make sure that you can get off to life with a fresh start as well. And I believe there are very few things I feel more strongly about. I believe it's simply a denial of the American dream that you have to put up with this. You should not have to put up with this kind of a system. So what do we do about it? For former students still carrying student loans, Congress could act now, today, by making sure that student loans could be refinanced, just like we do with mortgages. Under Senator Warren's bill, and she is the leader on this, that interest rate could be well below 4% instead of some of the rates I'm sure you're paying. And this legislation's in both the House and the Senate. My likely opponent opposes it. You put me in the Senate, I'm going to vote for that as fast as I can. And the time has come to focus on the next generation of students, too, and students in school now. To build a strong economy in the 21st century that works for everyone, a college education must be available to those students who study hard to get there, regardless of their economic status. I support those proposals to make two-year community college programs more accessible. This will pay dividends. This will pay dividends all over our state and our country. It will not just benefit students, it benefits employers who are eager and ready and even desperate to find qualified workers. I have found this to be true all the way from way up in Crandon, Wisconsin, to Oshkosh, to Kenosha. Actual stories where those jobs are available if the training is provided. And I want to thank my friend, Wisconsin's junior senator, my friend Tammy Baldwin, for taking the lead. She's taken the lead on this and is trying to make it happen. As a couple of the speakers already said, your parents shouldn't have to be rich for you to come to college. That's why I believe we have to build a system that allows Wisconsin's future students to graduate debt-free from our world-class institutions. Such a system must require hard work and accountability from everyone, from students, from schools, and even from the states. The states have to be on the hook to support their institutions of higher education. What this state has done, unfortunately, is cut back on support for education, jacking up your tuitions, and then a $250 million cut out of the university to boot. That is an attack on everything that Wisconsin is all about, and we have to fight it. So what stands in our way? Well, let's face it, too many of our politicians are out of touch. They think that because decades ago they could pay $400 or $600 for tuition with a part-time job, you should be able to do the same thing. And by the way, it's usually these same politicians who even oppose raising the minimum wage, or even don't believe there should be a minimum wage at all. And I'm worried about one other thing. And that's I've heard from many people in your age group, understandably, that you don't think this system can change, that the political process is so rigged that we can't change it. I understand that. I can understand that. But sometimes they think that voting and fighting will not make a difference, and I want to be clear, I understand that. But I do think that voting is our most powerful weapon. It's our most powerful weapon. You know that's true because if you look at our opponents and some of the elected officials who are trying to stop us, what are they trying to do? They know this. They're desperately trying to make it harder to vote. Mandate IDs, shorten early voting, eliminate same-day registration, gut the critical and classical and historical civil rights laws that have protected the right to vote in this country. But this isn't a new tactic. In fact, I'm told that in 1962, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood right here, and he spoke to students in this very theater. And as a part of his address, he stressed the dire need to register eligible voters. And there are the multimillionaires, the billionaires, and the big corporations who are trying to call all the shots in Washington, especially after that lousy decision in Citizens United. But the problem is, so many of them just can't relate to anyone who can't pay their tuition bills in cash. They don't know people like that. So let's do this. It gives me great pride, both as a Wisconsin alumnus and a lifelong resident of this state, to look out in this crowd and see the potential of our state and our country's future. One president-to-be also spoke to a group of students from this very stage back when he was still a senator. According to the Daily Cardinal's report from May of 1958, John F. Kennedy stood on this stage and urged UW students seated right where you are to go out in the world and give it the benefits of their education. So I'm reminded of one more reason we need to get this done. I know you hear this all the time, but it's really, really true now. Our country needs you. Our country needs the voices and experiences of young people of all stripes, regardless of their economic background. Your parents shouldn't have to have the salary of doctors for you to become a doctor. How else are we going to build an economy that works for everyone? And as our current president has said, today's younger generation is smarter, more determined, and more capable of making a difference than our generation. It is the job of our elected officials to make sure that your hard work pays off. But it can't be done without your help. Senator Warren and I are ready to fight with you every step of the way. We will do this with you. But you are the main source of the energy we need to actually win. You are the source. You are the energy. You are the ability to actually win this battle. So let's do this together, and go Badgers!
Hello, everyone. My name is Sridevi Nair. I'm a junior here at UW-Madison, and I'm Chief Justice of the Student Judiciary. The value of an education was instilled in me from a very young age because of its role in shaping my entire family history. My paternal grandfather grew up in India in dire poverty, virtually an orphan. He and his siblings spent their childhoods walking 10 miles each way to school with one shirt and one pair of pants that they had to launder each night. The only reason his next generation was able to leave India and start anew, a better life in a completely different hemisphere was because of new legislation that was passed in 1956 that allowed equal access to higher education in India. My grandfather was able to go to a government-subsidized dental school, and without the burden of student debt, he was able to escape the socioeconomic status that he was born into. He was able to provide for himself and his family. Without the timely passing of legislation on government colleges in India, my entire family trajectory would have been altered. Without my grandfather's success, I would not be here today. Later, as immigrants to the United States, neither my parents nor I had a voice in the government. My parents didn't become citizens until very recently, and I was too young to vote. So for a majority of my life, I had very little faith that there is a place in government for a woman of color like myself to be heard. Now, after gaining citizenship and finally being able to vote, I realized that I do play a role in our nation's democratic process. However, the views and issues of young people like me, women, and women of color are rarely heeded in the daily work of legislators in Washington. With only 19% of Congress being female, as opposed to 51% of the population, we do not have a Congress that represents the makeup of the populace. It's almost too easy to ignore the voices of women and other underrepresented people. And it's even easier to ignore the issues that face young people, as they are so often disillusioned with government to the point that they feel it does more harm for them than good. To overlook and often ignore the concerns of young people in this country is a natural consequence. However, one woman has made it her life's mission to stand up for these unheard and underrepresented voices and amplify them to the floor of the United States Senate. Senator Elizabeth Warren is a woman of great intellect who is also committed to the common good, a rare combination. A Harvard professor, she left her faculty position to run for United States Senate from Massachusetts. During her Senate campaign, Senator Warren promised to fight for middle-class families and make sure that everyone has a fair shot to get ahead. She called for policies that would level the regulatory playing field for small businesses and guarantee that everyone, even large and powerful corporations, pays a fair share in taxes and is held accountable for breaking the law. The Boston Globe has referred to her as the plain-spoken voice of people getting crushed by so many predatory lenders and under-regulated banks, a fitting title. Senator Warren has been the lead sponsor of the Bank on Students Emergency Loan Refinancing Act, a bill to let people with student loans at 8% or higher refinance down to today's lower rates, in very much the same way that one would refinance a home mortgage. She has stood up for students of for-profit colleges and pushed the Department of Education to discharge student loan debts of students cheated by Corinthian colleges. She has demanded accountability from student loan providers, notably calling out Sallie Mae spinoff Navient for breaking rules and cheating service members. However, there is so much more work to be done for achieving the goal of a debt-free college education. We, as a society, must decide whether access to affordable education is a right or a commodity to be bought and sold in the marketplace. Senator Warren's track record proves that she is willing to and capable of bringing fundamental change. And today, it is my great privilege to introduce her. She is a remarkable woman, a force of a senator, and a champion for students like us. Please join me in welcoming Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Country. Woo! That's right. So I want to start. I came here today because I wanted a chance to say in a very personal way, thank you. I have a giant thank you for you, and that is thank you for sending us Tammy Baldwin to the United States Senate. Fabulous. I love Tammy. And I got one more big thank you. Thank you because you're gonna send Russ Feingold to the United States Senate. Because that's how we make change. So I want to start this with something very personal. and that is how I met Senator Feingold. This dates back a long, long time, back in the mid-90s. I was doing a lot of work on why families go broke, and it's really some pretty bad stories about people who work hard, they get an education, they get married, they have kids, they buy a home, and then something bad happens in their lives. Long period without a job, serious medical problems, a divorce, a death in the family. And for a lot of those people, kind of their last chance in the slide down to deal with debts that are just rolling over them is bankruptcy. It's not a happy place. Nobody wants to advertise that they're bankrupt. No one wants to mention this at Thanksgiving dinner. But it's there. It's part of a safety net in America because we don't have a lot of the other safety nets that are out there in other civilized countries. So anyway, we got this bankruptcy law. We got this. It's true. It's true. So we got this bankruptcy law, and here we go. It's the 90s, the era of big bank deregulation, and the biggest financial institutions in this country have figured out a new profit model. And the new profit model is you lend to people who are already just barely hanging on at the financial edge. And you do it at giant interest rates with big penalty payments. You get them to pay, you get them on the treadmill, and you can make $1 bazillion doing this. And that's what they'd started doing. Families were just getting rolled over in this. And so the big banks looked at this and they said, you know, there's one place that we're losing some money, and that is some of these folks, after paying sometimes for years on these terrible loans, they finally declare bankruptcy and get themselves back to, keep in mind with bankruptcy, dead flat broke, which was a step up for these folks. And they said, so I know what let's do. Let's just make it a lot harder for people to file for bankruptcy. Let's make it a lot more expensive. Let's put in a bunch of regulations. Let's raise the lawyers' fees, every part of this, so that the number of people can get help just goes down. Now, I'm a law professor. I'm studying what's going on here. I'm doing the research on this. This is just horrible. This is just a bunch of big financial institutions who said, we can improve our bottom line by about 1 point, but that's $1 bazillion, if we just squeeze a lot of people in trouble, a lot of people with medical problems, a lot of people who've lost their jobs, if we just squeeze them a little harder, we can make more money. Sounds like a great deal. And there were a lot of people in the United States Senate who said, sign me up. I'm going to help the big banks every chance I get. And I went down to Washington, and listen, I didn't know anybody down there. I actually hadn't even met my own senators at this point. It was not a political thing. I went down to Washington to try to look for help. And one of the very first people I ever met who didn't ask the question, oh, well, where are the banks on this and their contributions and their lobbyists, but who said, what does this mean for working families? And I talked with him about it, and he said, I'm in all the way. And that guy was Russ Feingold, and I'm in all the way for him. It's true. It's true. I got to tell you, ultimately it was Russ Feingold, it was Ted Kennedy, it was Paul Wellstone, good people who just said, I don't care that all the money's on one side, all the power is on one side, they're going to stand up for working people who need them. And that's when I learned there are two things you want to see. One, I don't know how else to say it, who's got a good heart, who knows what it means to be in public service. And the second is, who's tough enough to get out there and fight for it? And that's Russ Feingold both ways. Yep. So here we are, nearly 20 years later from those fights. Here we are, and I got to tell you, we need Russ Feingold more than ever. And it's true. And I'm just going to tell you why we need Russ Feingold more than ever. We need Russ Feingold more than ever because the game is rigged. It's rigged in favor of the millionaires and the billionaires and the big corporations, and we need some people who are going to fight back against that, and that's Russ. Yep. So, we came here today to talk about student debt because student debt is, for me, a perfect example of this. Education is about opportunity. This is about how we create a future. We invest in the education of the next generation, and that is true from our littlest folks up to our biggest. We make those investments because we fundamentally believe that if everybody gets a shot at an education, if everybody's got a fighting chance, then they have an opportunity to build a future for themselves and for their families. We make that investment together. Education is a real opportunity, but I gotta tell you, it has shifted. Russ told his story, I'm gonna tell mine because I can up him on this story. I love that when I do that. But I will tell you about it. No, I'll tell you about this. I ended up at a commuter college, public school, commuter college, public university that cost $50 a semester. But I want you to think about what that means. That was in America when everybody said, we're going to invest in giving every kid who works hard, plays by the rules, a real opportunity to get an education without being crushed by debt. That's what America believed, and that's what we've got to get back to again. You bet. Today, instead of measuring the cost of a public education in hundreds of dollars, we measure it in thousands and even tens of thousands of dollars. And what does that mean? Because families haven't gotten any richer in this time period. What it means is that young people are borrowing more and more money. We live in a world now where nearly 70% of all young people who are trying to get a college diploma will have to borrow money to get there. And so here's the part. And in fact, I just want you to think about this on student loans. Think about where you were exactly 1 year ago today, wherever it was for you, whether you were already here on campus, whether you were still back in high school, wherever you were. In the last year, the last 365 days, the amount of student loan debt outstanding has gone up by $100 billion. That's how much more debt people are carrying today than they were carrying just a year ago. And that tells you where we are headed. We are now at $1.3 trillion in outstanding student loan debt. And that means personally, for each person out there, as Russ talked about, affects family decisions, as our students talked about, affects family decisions. It also affects our economy because it means that young people can't buy homes at the time one would expect, can't buy cars, can't start small businesses, can't do the things they would do that would keep this economy up and going. Why? Because they're getting crushed by student loan debt. So, what are we going to do about this? We have a lot. We know what to do. This is what really gets me about it. We know what to do. One part of it is we need to support our state schools. We need taxpayer dollars in state schools. There's a reason it's called public education. Every student needs a debt-free option to get a college diploma, period. You are blessed to be at one of the finest public universities in this country. I have been on this campus many times as an academic, and this is an extraordinary place. But this is an extraordinary place that should be open to students without crushing them with student loan debt. That's what we need to do here and across this country. And there's one more piece. We need to refinance outstanding student loan debt, and we need to do it now. We need to do this. Now, I want to focus on this second one for just a minute, because Russ was talking about a bill that we've had in the United States Senate on this. Right now, the United States government charges an interest rate on student loans that covers the administrative costs, covers the bad debt losses, covers the cost of funds, and then, on top of all that, makes a profit for the government. How much profit? Well, let me just give you a little slice of the loans where we've got particularly good data. The loans that were put out between 2007 and 2012, that cohort of loans, is on target right now to produce $66 billion in profits for the United States government. I want you to think about what that means. We are talking about $180 billion in profits right now that are expected out of the student loan program. And here's the problem we've got. We go to the United States Senate and say, I want to reduce the interest rate on student loans. You ready for this? The government's already spent the profits. Yeah, the money has already been spent. Thank you very much. The next time you see one of the big missiles go by, or you can know you've already paid for that with your student loans and the money that is expected to come in the future. So here's the problem. When you propose to reduce the interest rate on student loans, the way we're set up in budgeting now, is that you must find an offset, a place to make up the money for the budget in the future. So that's what we did with Bank on Students. Bank on Students says, let's reduce the profit on student loans and let's make up the difference. Everybody hold on to your seats here. Let's make up the difference by asking billionaires to pay taxes at the same rate that teachers and firefighters do. So, that's our bill. We put this bill on the floor of the United States Senate, and we got every single Democrat voted for it. Both independents voted for it. Heck, we even got 3 Republicans to vote for it. Woo! Well, except the Republicans filibustered it. So it did not become law. And that's why I'm here today. Because your current senator, Ron Johnson, is one of the guys out in front to make sure that when the choice is between tax loopholes for billionaires or reducing the interest rate on student loans, Ron Johnson stands strong for the billionaires. In fact, I want to get a quote on this. Ron Johnson said he was voting to filibuster the student loan bill. Why? Because it was, listen to this quote, grossly unfair. So there it is. That's the Republican philosophy in a nutshell. That's trickle-down economics right in front of you, played out. The job of government, according to the Republicans, is to help the rich and the powerful become richer and more powerful. That's what it's all about. It's about firing the cops on Wall Street. It's about lowering taxes for those at the top. And if that means there's less money to spend on public education, less money to spend on basic infrastructure, less money to spend on research, then the answer is that's just too bad. The Republicans believe in a world where they say, in effect, I got mine, rest of you are on your own. Let's face it, the game is rigged, the Republicans rigged it, and they want to keep it that way. So here's the deal. We can whimper about it, we can whine about it, or we can fight back. Russ and I, we're going to fight back. We're going to fight back. We're gonna fight back. You ready to fight back on this? You ready to fight back on this? You bet. You bet. And that is exactly why I am here today. When people stand together, when we talk about what we believe in, people are ready to stand with us. And I want to be clear. This isn't just about politics. This is about basic values. This is about who we are as a people and what kind of a country we are going to build. So we're here together. We're here together to remind ourselves what we believe in. We believe that every kid should have a chance to get an education without being crushed by student loan debt, and we're willing to get out there and fight for it. Yes. Yes. And we believe that giant Wall Street banks shouldn't be allowed to cheat families, crash the economy, and walk away with billions in bailout money, and we're going to fight for accountability. You bet. What else do we believe? I'm going to say something that's real controversial in some areas. We believe in science. We believe that climate change is real, that it's our moral duty to protect this planet, and we are willing to fight for it. You bet. We believe that no one should work full-time and still live in poverty, and that means raising the minimum wage, and we will fight for it. You bet. You bet. And I cannot set foot in Wisconsin without having a chance to say this. We believe that workers have a right to come together, to bargain together, and rebuild America's middle class. Yes. Yes. You bet we do. Yes. Yes. Good. And we believe that after a lifetime of hard work, your parents, your grandparents, and someday you should be able to retire with dignity, and that means protecting and expanding Social Security. Yes. You bet. We believe that immigration made this country strong, and that means comprehensive immigration reform, path to citizenship, and we are fighting for it. Yes. 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 And I cannot believe that I actually have to say this in 2015. But we believe in equal pay for equal work and a woman's right to dominion over her own body. Yes. Yes. We do. We do. We do. And we believe that racism, sexism, homophobia, hatred, injustice, and bigotry have no place in this country, and we're willing to say it loud and strong. We believe that Black lives matter, and we're going to keep saying it until we make a difference in this country. Yes. Yes. You bet we will. We will. We will. Yes. It does matter. Yes. You know I could do this all day long. But we do have to remind ourselves what we believe in, and that means I got to do just one more. One more, because I am here with my very, very dear friend, Russ Feingold. We believe that corporations are not people. We will overturn Citizens United, and we will make this great nation once again work for the people. Bet. You bet. That's what we'll do. Yes. Yes. I love it. Okay. Okay. So on that theme, for just 1 minute, let's pause here to think about that last point. Ron Johnson has a plan to win the Senate. His plan is let the Koch brothers decide who should be the senator from Wisconsin. The Koch brothers call Ron Johnson, and I'm quoting here, a model senator. I want you to think about what he's modeling and for whom he's modeling it. Ron Johnson refused to sign the Badger Pledge to keep outside money out of the campaign. I want to say that's a pledge that we signed in Massachusetts, my Republican opponent and I, to keep outside money out of the race. Russ Feingold offered that. Now, worked out pretty well in Massachusetts, which may be why Ron Johnson said no. So here's the deal. Ron Johnson believes that the Koch brothers are going to buy this race. He thinks that billionaires will decide who's going to be the senator from Wisconsin. And all I can say is, we've got news for him. The people will decide who the senator from Wisconsin is going to be. And that's going to be someone who won't be there just for the millionaires, just for the billionaires, just for the big corporations. It will be someone who will stand up and fight for the people of Wisconsin, and that is Russ Feingold. So, are you ready to do